This is the best of the regulars with Jordan and Colin on Talk Sports Radio, Extra 90.5. Roundtable on Extra 90.5.
My man Teskey going down to Kingston this weekend. He's going to be drinking in the atmosphere that is the Tragically Hip. I got to be honest, I'm not a huge Tragically Hip fan, but I've been completely wrapped up in the stories surrounding the whole thing.
I've always said, they're not my favorite band, but I think when you look at the Tragically Hip, whenever they came on my iPod, I would never change their songs. I would always listen to them start to finish, and everyone has got some type of connection to them. I was able to meet the band when I was in Ottawa working at Blues Fest, this big outdoor festival. So that's where I met them the first time, and they were honestly just down-to-earth people, and that's what made me like the band, because I'm way too young to really appreciate them. I'm only 23.
Yeah, the glory days.
So I wasn't there for the glory days, of course. So they're that band that has connected with a lot of people because they've done so many Canadian shows, and they talk about Canadian things, and they talk about Canadian issues, and they only wanted to stay here, which I think makes them unique.
Very unique. Also unique, the people down at Peterborough Kia. There's a cool event going on tomorrow. It's called the Drive Change, and it's a Kia Canada initiative that encourages local dealers to hold an event to raise funds for their favorite not-for-profit in their communities right across the country. Proceeds from this one will be going to Camp Maple Leaf. Camp counselors and Peterborough Kia staff will be on hand to help wash cars tomorrow. Peterborough Kia, it is located at the corner of Lansdowne East and Ashburnham. We got Brian Goldfinger. He's going to give us some advice coming up here in a second call. And I want to get your take on this, though. This is a story we've been following for, it seems like, a couple of years now. It's a big real estate deal. If you had to ballpark how much the Playboy Mansion sold for yesterday, what would your guess be?
Ooh, well, I remember when this was first going down, when Hefner kind of expressed interest in selling. The one caveat was, hey, you can buy my house, but I still have to live here.
Yeah.
So it's like, you pay the rent, I just want a room here.
Yeah, and a couple of ladies. The Playboy Mansion sold to one of Hefner's neighbors for $100 million.
Wow, I was going to say more than that. I was going to guess like $250 million.
But for $100 million, you got to keep the old man living upstairs.
I guess that brought the price down, eh?
I would think so. We are going into the Peterborough Roundtable. It is brought to you by Rocky Ridge Drinking Water Limited, Peterborough's water cooler company, 100 Rubridge Street, across from GE Canada. Our first guest is Extra 90.5's legal expert, Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. I believe he is the first one on the station to have his own personal intro.
Goldfinger, he's the man with the Midas touch.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Brian Goldfinger, what's going on, my man? It's been a while. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Very good, very good. You watching the Olympics or what?
Of course, first and foremost, I'm honored to be on the roundtable. I didn't realize I was on the roundtable this morning.
It's big time now.
Yeah. That's when you know you've made it, Brian. When you make it on the roundtable, you're somebody in this town.
Amazing. So I have been watching the Olympics. I'm loving the Olympics. I'm just upset that Ryan Lochte has now stolen the Olympics from all of us.
Well, I was going to ask you as a lawyer, we might need you to dig into the extradition treaties between the United States and Brazil, because they might want to rope him back there, you know?
I'm going to tell you something about Lochte, is that if I were on the Brazilian Olympic Committee or the organizing committee for the Olympiad, I would look to Ryan Lochte and probably sue him for defamation if what Ryan Lochte is saying is false, if he's lying about his story about being, held up by Brazilian thugs at gunpoint. Because I just think if that's a lie, it brings down the games and it brings down Rio tourism. It brings down people wanting to go to Brazil. So if Lochte's lying, he's got some pockets. He has assets. I would go after him. There you go.
Bingo. See, that's why he's our Extra 90.5 legal analyst. I like that, Colin. And there's whole other layers to this story since we went off the air yesterday. Like, there's a whole different saga. When we were on the air yesterday, we were pretty sure it was kind of fake, but it hadn't been confirmed yet. Now all this other crazy stuff happened right after our shift, it seemed, Colin.
Yeah, and Ryan Lochte has actually issued an apology. He put out a nice little press release, but it's an apology that doesn't really apologize. It kind of leaves more to be desired.
Those are my favorite.
I don't even think this is really going to help his case. And it's just going to be really fascinating to watch what happens because, like you said, if I'm Brazil right now, I'm absolutely irate because everyone knew going into the games about the concerns over crime and what was going to happen to the athletes. And then you actually have athletes go outside of the village and cause a ruckus and then blame it on Brazil, which, like Brian said, it causes defamation. And I'm wondering how far this is going to go.
When did Lochte put out that apology?
It just happened about 10, 15 minutes ago.
Did he put it out on TMZ or something like that?
Oh, I don't know if it went to TMZ. I don't think he wants to go to them first. They got that video up pretty quick yesterday. Yeah. But some of his people put it out, and he actually on his personal Twitter account sent it out not too long ago.
The intriguing thing for me is, and maybe, Brian, you have a theory, maybe you don't. What exactly is the cover-up here? What was the lie for it? Was it just the vandalism at the gas station? I've always thought somehow, some way, prostitutes are involved here. I don't know why.
That's a good theory. That's a good theory.
That's what I think, because otherwise I'm what they did with the vandalism, and they ended up paying for the damage and whatnot and some public urination and all this kind of stuff. I'm just thinking, for you to come out and tell a lie that involves drug dealers and a gun to your head and all this crazy stuff, you must have been doing something bad that you really didn't want to get found out on. So there has to be another layer that we're not sure about.
Well, let's wait and see.
Respect, Colin, what do you think?
I don't want to try to squash the argument and seem overly simple. I think you could chalk it up to 4 guys who just had way too much booze. And the story became fabricated because they were hammered and a gun was shown and one lie was told, and that led to a series of lies.
Oh, it's a web.
Aren't there 2 other guys still in Brazil who were in on the vandalism, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get out of the country?
Yeah, well, that was the thing. The 2 U.S. swimmers who were taken literally off a plane to have to go back in and answer some questions.
And I saw that Fagan, one of the guys that was still there, he's going to have to pay almost $9,000 to a charity just to avoid going to jail. And so Lochte was the one that made out like a bandit because he literally got out of there in time and he can't go back. There's too many people that will protect him and make sure he doesn't have to go back to Brazil, whereas the other 3 guys have just been fighting to get out of there. And the Fagan guy is probably going to have to pay a handsome amount just to not go to jail for making up a false crime.
From a legal point of view, Brian, let's look here in Canada. Colin and I go out, we do something stupid, and then we make up this story, and all of a sudden police start looking into the incident. Could we face some sort of issue, do you think?
If you lie to the police?
If we tell this huge story about this robbery that happened that didn't end up happening?
If you deliberately lie to the police, there's probably a problem there, but I'm not a criminal lawyer, though, so I want to stay away from there.
No, you're not a criminal lawyer. What's your favorite event, Brian? What do you like watching?
You know what I like watching, and it's going to sound odd, the men's weightlifting. Okay? It's rarely on, but I saw it, I think, a few nights ago, and my wife has asked me, why are you watching this? I said, I told my wife, they're lifting a car over their heads. Well over 500 pounds over their heads. It's amazing. And I love watching it, just the builds of these guys. So if you compare it to, say, a runner like Usain Bolt or Andre DeGrasse, they're long, slender, lean. And then the weightlifters are they're massive guys. And you hope that they're clean. And if they are clean, their bodies and physiques, they're huge. And the amount of weight that they're lifting over their heads is remarkable. And it's that one split second of concentration, power, and strength. They get this over their head. I just love watching the weightlifting.
I watched actually a little bit too the other day, and I really got a kick out of the guy who ended up winning the gold medal. He was a bald guy, and every time he'd get the bar over his head, he'd do the tongue out. There's a showmanship element to it there as well. You mentioned Usain Bolt. Did you watch the big race last night?
Yes, the best. Last night was the 200 meter, and that's the best 20 seconds in athletics. And then a few nights ago was the 100 meter. That's the best 10 seconds. And then my question for you guys is Andre DeGrasse the Steph Curry of running?
I would say you'd probably make that argument right now.
He quite literally looks like Steph Curry.
Well, yeah, he looks like him. And physically speaking, you're right. I think that we talked about this the last time you were on the show where we were talking about the NBA Finals. And Steph Curry, one of the appeals for him, to the mass audience is the fact that he doesn't look like a freak athlete, right? If you look at Andre DeGrasse, 5'10", 165 pounds.
Right.
There's nothing overly spectacular about him other than he can just fly on the track.
And the whole field, when they lined up for the 100 or the 200, these are big, powerful, explosive, chiseled men. And then you see Andre DeGrasse, his muscle tone, it's nothing out of the ordinary. His height and size, it's not out of the ordinary. He's built like a normal guy, and he can just run out of his shoes. Unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. And Colin, it's already got me looking ahead to 2020. I know we still got the relay to go, but
Yeah,
2020 for
you
sure.
have to look at 2020, and you have to be positive if you're a Canadian fan, because look at Andre DeGrasse and how he starts out races. He's not good out of the gates, but he can close almost better than anybody except for guys named Usain Bolt. That's the only thing in his way. It doesn't look like Usain Bolt's going to be in the next Olympics. This looks like it's going to be it for him. So if you're Andre DeGrasse, you have to be looking at this. You got a silver, you got a bronze. Next Olympics is your time.
I have a question for you guys. Who's a better Olympian? Is it Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps?
Well, we've had this conversation. I think we both. I wish we disagreed, but I think we both agree it's Bolt, right? You were on the Bolt
I go
train?
Usain Bolt because he's never lost. He's got 8 gold. You know, Phelps was dominant in so many events, but there's a couple silvers in there.
My contention, Brian, and see if you agree with this. I just said that universally, every nation that competes in the Olympics has a sprint program, has sprinters. Not everyone competes in swimming, right? When you actually look, like very seldom you'll see an African country competing in swimming. The Asian swimming programs are getting better, but they're not quite where they are. But sprinting, when it gets down to it, to me, that is the most universally pure Olympic event. And therefore, Usain Bolt's showcase in the 100 and 200 meter are just that much more impressive. Just a little bit. I know Michael Phelps, he's got outstanding totals for medals, but also you got to look at the fact that the volume of medals in the pool far outrank the volume of medals on the track, right? So it'd be my equation was, well, okay, if there was, a 25 meter, a 50 meter, a 100 meter, a 200 meter, then Usain Bolt could probably win much more medals. If there was a relay for the 100, for the 200, for the 400, all this crazy stuff. So that's sort of my contention, was that I'm impressed by the volume of medals in which Michael Phelps has won, but at the same time, Usain Bolt, I think I said this to John Badham the other day, and I wasn't around for Muhammad Ali. You're not quite that old for him in his prime. But Usain Bolt, to me, is the most exciting athlete that I can recall. When I was watching him last night, now don't get me wrong, I'm cheering for Andre DeGrasse. But when Andre DeGrasse didn't win, it wasn't like I was super disappointed, because I was just so thrilled that Usain Bolt, I got to watch him dance around again, do his poses. And there you go. There's the showmanship element to it too. So I will give Usain Bolt the nod over Michael Phelps.
You know what I find interesting for the people on the Phelps side? I agree with you first. On the Phelps side, swimming is a totally different sport, and all the different disciplines and strokes in swimming. So somebody on the Phelps side might say, well, Bolt, he doesn't run the 110-meter hurdles.
It's a fair point. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And they look at it that way. Before the Olympics started, I would say that Phelps was better, but because Bolt did it now 3 consecutive games, and then you have the I think he'll really put the cherry on the Sunday if the Jamaican team wins the relay. Then I don't think there's any dispute that Bolt is the greatest Olympian of all time. But somebody mentioned to me, Bolt doesn't run the hurdles, and Phelps does every stroke, and he wins at every different stroke. And swimming is a very, very isolating sport.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think the coolest part, and I don't know if this is getting enough play, because I know there's been comparisons all over the place between Michael Phelps and Usain Bolt. I think the coolest thing is we're watching both of them at their absolute peak, and none of them seem to waver. It wasn't like Michael Phelps had all these medals and sort of limped into this Olympics and kind of gave a so-so performance. I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, man, you couldn't do it 4 years from now? Like, you're just that excited. You're like, come on, can you not come back and win at least a couple of medals? It's nice to see athletes who might be ending their Olympic careers, but on such high notes. That's sort of, I think, a pretty cool thing.
I think Michael Phelps could return in 4 years and still be pretty dominant, but I think he's just sick of swimming. I think he's tired of the routine. I think he's tired of the 6 a.m. practices. I think he wants to eat what he wants. I think that's really what you got to talk about here.
I want to talk about eating too, because you know what upset me at the games is all the publicity that McDonald's is getting.
Oh, yeah.
And the athletes are just going to town on McDonald's. And I think to myself, these athletes, they've trained for years and years and years and are blowing so many calories, and they're finely tuned machines, their bodies, and they're going to town on McDonald's. And then all the kids, all they hear is all these athletes are eating McDonald's, and the athletes are putting up photos on Instagram and Twitter. Look at all the McDonald's I'm eating. I just don't know what a good example that sets for the children.
Well, Michael Phelps posted what he ate in his first Olympics and what he eats now, and it's drastically different. He's eating like half the calories now as he did like 10 years ago, but he eats like chocolate chip pancakes, He eats like waffles, but
Oh.
he burns it off, and that's the whole point. So he could probably take McDonald's every day if he trains the way he does and be fine. That's the whole point. People think, oh, well, these guys need McDonald's. I can do it too. Well, no. You got to wake up at 6 a.m. and leave the pool at 8 p.m. and swim nonstop.
Yeah, you got to go for marathon swims and runs and all this kind of stuff, which most of us don't do. We are chatting with our legal expert here. He is Brian Goldfinger of Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. And I want to ask you this question, just maybe on a legal note here, Brian. We've been writing a couple of stories in terms of pedestrian accidents.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who ended up getting hit by a car, whatever the scenario was, and there was a little bit of a battle here. What do people need to know if they are hit by a vehicle? Is it always one of those things that pedestrians do always have the right of way? How does that work?
Well, Pokemon Go is huge right now. So if you look up and down George Street, you have a lot of people with their heads down, just focusing on their smartphone, playing Pokemon Go. So I always tell people, in the battle of car versus pedestrian or car versus bicycle, car always wins. So even if the car is in the wrong and you get hit and hurt and your injuries last a lifetime, no dollar figure can ever compensate you. We can get you $1 million, $2 million, $5 million. It doesn't matter if you lost your leg, you lost your leg. You can't put a price on that. So it's not about being right or wrong. It's about being conscious of your surroundings and being aware. Having said that, though, if a car does hit you, one of the mistakes we see at our office is people, they don't report it to the police. They think, oh, it's nothing. Oh, it's nothing. And then a week later, they can't move their leg or they have some serious problems. If they don't report it to the police right away, the police won't be able to investigate a liability fault. But in addition to that, they might not be able to track down who committed the offense. And that's an even bigger problem if we can't find who did that, who hit you. There might be insurance coverage issues. There might be all sorts of issues that you're not aware of. So call the police. There's nothing wrong with that. It's free to call the police, and then get the medical treatment you need. The great thing about living in Canada is we don't have to pay for health care. So people in the United States, they might be reluctant to go to the hospital or go to the doctor because they have to pay for it out of pocket. Here we don't. And here at Peterborough, we have a great hospital. Go there if you've been hurt in an accident. It costs you nothing, and it's your health, it's your body. Nobody's going to care more about your health and your body than you. And you should go. And those are the two top kind of mistakes that we see. People don't take it seriously. They don't report it to the police, or they don't get the medical attention they need right away.
Very cool. And where can people reach you over there at Goldfinger Personal Injury Law?
They can visit the website, which is fantastic, at goldfingerlaw.com, or they can call us at 1-877-730-1777.
Brian, my man, pleasure as always. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for having me on the roundtable, boys.
All right, here we go. Oh, he even has his own extra.
You are a clever, resourceful man, Mr. Bond. Well, thank you. Perhaps too clever.
Catch up on what you missed or hear it again. This is the best of the regulars on Talk Sports Radio, Extra 90.5.